Differential knowledge and wisdom. One of the most important questions about any proposed course of action is whether we know how to do it. Policy A may be better than policy B, but that does not matter if we simply do not know how to do policy A. Perhaps it would be better to rehabilitate criminals rather than punish them if we knew how to do it. Rewarding merit might be better than rewarding results if we knew how to do it. But one of the crucial differences between those with the tragic vision and those with the vision of the anointed is in what they respectively assume that we know how to do. Those with the vision of the anointed are seldom deterred by any question as to whether anyone has the knowledge required to do what they are attempting. As we have already seen, when President Lyndon Johnson spoke of addressing the conditions that breed urban violence, he said, "All of us know what those conditions are: ignorance, discrimination, slums, poverty, disease, not enough jobs." Similarly, when the New York Times editorially expressed dismay at statistics on high infant mortality rates in the United States, it declared, "America already knows how to make the rate drop again." With these and innumerable other issues, the question for the anointed is not knowledge, but compassion, commitment, and other such subjective factors, which supposedly differentiate themselves from other people. The refrain of the anointed is, "We already know the answers, there's no need for more studies," and the kinds of questions raised by those with other views are just stalling and obstructing progress. Solutions are out there waiting to be found, like eggs at an Easter egg hunt. Intractable problems with painful trade-offs are simply not part of the vision of the anointed. Problems exist only because other people are not as wise or as caring, or not as imaginative and bold as the anointed. If there was one defining moment of the 1960s, it might well have been at the Judicial Conference in 1965, when Justices Brennan and Warren roared with laughter as a law professor poured scorn and ridicule on the concerns of a former police commissioner about the effects of recent judicial rulings on law enforcement and public safety. It was the anointed in their classic role of disdaining the benighted, and dismissing the very possibility that the unintended ramifications of morally inspired decisions might make matters worse on net balance. Far more important than particular reckless policies, even those with such deadly consequences as weakening the criminal law, is a whole mindset in which omnicompetence is implicitly assumed, and unhappy social phenomena are presumed to be unjustified morally and remediable intellectually and politically. Inherent constraints of circumstances or people are brushed aside, as are alternative policy approaches which offer no special role for the anointed. The burden of proof is not put on their vision, but on existing institutions. The notion that society must justify itself before the bar of reason presupposes that there is some individual or group capable of such encyclopedic knowledge and such mastery of the structured principles of so many disciplines as to make such judgments across a broad spectrum and at a speed that would fit all these judgments into one lifetime. Those with sweeping schemes for reconstructing society seldom pause to ask about the sufficiency of anyone's knowledge for such a task. Carl Menninger, for example, said, "The immediate task of our time seems to be to think out our economic organization in dynamic terms and according to a strategy which will so coordinate the now prevailing tendencies that they will no longer conflict. The political problem, therefore, is to organize human impulses in such a way that they will direct their energy to the right strategic points and steer the total process of development in the desired direction." In other words, the only problem is political mobilization and social imagination, so as to result in a solution in which current tendencies will no longer conflict, rather than a mere trade-off in which their continuing conflicts will be dealt with as best one can. Nor was any time wasted worrying about the presumption of some people in preempting the decisions of others, these others' decisions being treated as mere impulses for the anointed to organize and direct toward what the anointed define as the right strategic points. Indeed, the whole process was analogized to engineering problems, with the designing of another type of human being included in this engineering. For, as Menninger noted, no economic order can be brought into existence as long as the corresponding human type does not emerge. In short, not only is the external world to be redesigned, so are the people who are to inhabit it. Were this merely the fantasy of one man, it would not be worth noting, but it is in fact part of the vision of the anointed, as it has existed for centuries. The idea of creating the kind of people needed for a new society goes at least as far back as William Godwin's Enquiry Concerning Political Justice in 1793, where he spoke of men as they may hereafter be made through a process of the improvement of mankind, which he thought would be in the utmost degree simple. 2 centuries later, the task appears less simple, and such expressions as brainwashing and re-education camps have chilling overtones in the light of history, though that has not stopped indoctrination efforts in American schools and colleges, led by those who still have the vision of the anointed today. By contrast, those with the tragic vision have long questioned whether anyone, themselves included, knows enough to engage in sweeping social and political experiments. "We cannot change the nature of things and of men," Edmund Burke said, "but must act upon them the best we can." Adam Smith took a very similar position, while seeing the more general issue as a conflict of visions between the doctrinaire with an ideal plan of government, who seems to imagine that he can arrange the different members of a great society with as much ease as the hand arranges the different pieces upon a chessboard, and the more modest reformer who will adjust his policies to the confirmed habits and prejudices of the people, and who, when he cannot establish the right, will not disdain to ameliorate the wrong. Those with the tragic vision might share the desire for social betterment, without sharing the assumptions as to how much knowledge and control of social ramifications exist. A succinct summary of the tragic vision was given by historians Will and Ariel Durant. Out of every 100 new ideas, 99 or more will probably be inferior to the traditional responses which they propose to replace. No one man, however brilliant or well-informed, can come in one lifetime to such fullness of understanding as to safely judge and dismiss the customs or institutions of his society, for these are the wisdom of generations after centuries of experiment in the laboratory of history. Severe limitations on the effectiveness of well-intentioned notions were likewise seen by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said, "To improve conditions of life and the race is the main thing, but how the devil can I tell whether I am not pulling it down more in some other place? Doing good on some problem right under one's nose is not enough in a world of constrained options and systemic interactions, where the overlooked costs of immediate benevolence take their toll elsewhere." Holmes exemplified the tragic vision of life, based on a tragic vision of human limitations. He spoke disdainfully of the vain attempt to love one's neighbor as oneself, of our legislation to make other people better, and of attempts to legislate bliss. In the tragic vision, individual sufferings and social evils are inherent in the innate deficiencies of all human beings, whether these deficiencies are in knowledge, wisdom, morality, or courage. Moreover, the available resources are always inadequate to fulfill all the desires of all the people. Thus there are no solutions in the tragic vision, but only trade-offs that still leave many desires unfulfilled and much unhappiness in the world. What is needed in this vision is a prudent sense of how to make the best trade-offs from the limited options available, and a realization that unmet needs will necessarily remain, that attempting to fully meet these needs seriatim only deprives other people of other things, so that a society pursuing such a policy is like a dog chasing its tail. Given this vision, particular solutions to particular problems are far less important than having and maintaining the right processes for making trade-offs and correcting inevitable mistakes. To those with the tragic vision, the integrity of processes is crucial, much more so than particular causes. As Jean-François Revel put it, in a free society there is no single just cause, only just methods. The vision of the anointed begins with entirely different premises. Here it is not the innate limitations of human beings, or the inherent limitations of resources, which create unhappiness, but the fact that social institutions and social policies are not as wisely crafted as the anointed would have crafted them. As John Stuart Mill put it, the present wretched education and wretched social arrangements are the only real hindrance to happiness being widespread. Mill's view in many ways epitomized the vision of the anointed. When he spoke of the best and wisest, it was with none of the sense of irony that the phrase the brightest and the best has acquired in our time. Great things could be achieved, Mill said, if the superior spirits would but join with each other for social betterment. He called upon the universities to send forth into society a succession of minds, not the creatures of their age, but capable of being its improvers and regenerators. A democracy can rise above mediocrity, according to Mill, only where the sovereign many have let themselves be guided, which in their best times they always have done, by the counsels and influence of a more highly gifted and instructed one or few. It is on these latter, the thinking minds, the most cultivated intellects in the country, those who have been in advance of society in thought and feeling, that social well-being and progress depend. In short, it was not the case in this vision that all human beings were incapable of leading society to substantially higher levels of understanding, behavior, and well-being. The best and wisest, the anointed, were not only capable of it, but had a duty to do it. Where they lacked the political power to do so, then their duty was that of keeping alive the sacred fire in a few minds when we are unable to do more, as Mill wrote to a friend. The hallmark of the vision of the anointed is that what the anointed consider lacking for the kind of social progress they envision is will and power, not knowledge. But to those with the tragic vision, what is dangerous are will and power without knowledge, and for many expansive purposes, knowledge is inherently insufficient. In their haste to be wiser and nobler than others, the anointed have misconceived two basic issues. They seem to assume, first, that they have more knowledge than the average member of the benighted, and second, that this is the relevant comparison. The real comparison, however, is not between the knowledge possessed by the average member of the educated elite versus the average member of the general public, but rather the total direct knowledge brought to bear through social processes, the competition of the marketplace, social sorting, etc., involving millions of people, versus the second-hand knowledge of generalities possessed by a smaller elite group. Moreover, the existing generation's traditions and values distill the experiences of other millions in times past, yet the anointed seem to conceive the issue as one of the syllogistic reasoning of the past versus the syllogistic reasoning of the present, preferring to believe that improvements in knowledge and reason permit the former to be dismissed.